Okay, for those people that are still with us at the moment, we've got our final plenary session of the day. After we've done this session, we're going to draw one more raffle ticket as well, so I hope you still got them because there's a £100 cash prize to be won, so that'll be just after 5 o'clock. And then we'll also talk through the plans for this evening. But I'd like to introduce you to Tony and Lawrence from the University of East Anglia, who are going to be talking to you about the podcast that they've been running. Over to you guys.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tom.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello.
Hi, everybody.
My name's Tony Jermy. I'm the Academic Lead for Simulation-Based Education at University of East Anglia in Norwich.
Hi, everybody. My name's Lawrence Hill, and I chair the Simulation Group in the School of Health Sciences at UEA Norwich. I'm a paramedic by background. Massive shout out to all of the paramedics remaining in the room, and of course, everybody else here today as well. Welcome to our talk today. We're going to be talking to you about MetaSimCast, bringing simplicity to the complex process of podcasting live.
Yeah, we're going to do it like a bit of a simulation, really.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about what we do beforehand. We're then going to do the podcast, and we're going to record it, and then we're going to put it out onto the YouTube channel. QR code there. Like and subscribe.
If you would like to keep in touch with all of our Simcast-related activity, that is the QR code that you could scan. That would be great. This is not a traditional conference presentation. We don't have any cutting-edge findings for you. This is not about research. Essentially, we are just going to demonstrate how we communicate simulation. Initially started within our School of Health Sciences and is now kind of reaching a little bit further afield. And big thanks for inviting us here to give this talk today. So we haven't actually done this before, though, have we?
No, not live on stage, so we're going to see how it goes.
Yeah, so excited, but to be honest, frankly, also bricking it a little bit.
We're very humbled to be called here today because our podcast is very much in its infancy. And yeah, we're just hoping to do a bit of networking today, and who knows where it goes.
Yeah, so because we are nervous and because we are bricking it, we also wanted to assert the basic assumption. And we know that as simulation educators, we are keen for the basic assumption. We're assuming that you're competent, that you're intelligent, and that you care about simulation communication and want to improve it, regardless of how badly we balls this presentation up. But we are doers. That's the thing. We are doers. We get stuff done, much to the chagrin of our long-suffering school manager, Fel Hinch. So yeah, as Tony says, we've structured this talk today around the simulation structure. So we're going to give you a briefing. We're going to give you the simulation body, and then we're going to kind of debrief as well. What are we going to do over the course of this briefing?
Well, all good briefings start with some learning outcomes. So hopefully, by the end of the session, we should have been able to explain the process of podcasting, describe our journey as simulation content creators.
Oh, God, I hate that.
I hate that term.
I hate that. It brings the taste of sick to the back of
asking to
his
like
throat.
and subscribe, you just don't get used to it. And promote our wonderful podcast as a vehicle, not only as a podcast on YouTube and all popular streaming platforms.
All right, give it a rest,
but also as a potential network for simulation educators, facilitators, and alike.
And that's one of the things I think that's coming through loud and clear already today is the fact that, you know, we are a bunch of enthusiastic simulation educators. We want to connect with each other and we want to share good practice. So, you know, big thanks to CAE for hosting this conference today. But we always brief, don't we?
Yep. So what we do before our podcast is we have a discussion. We fill out a document with I want to say a skeleton of bullet points.
So I like a script, I like loads of notes, and Tony likes to shoot from the hip. That's just how it is. That's how we roll.
Overwhelmed by Lawrence's notes.
Yeah. It's like, it's chapter and verse. And then what we do is we kind of just make sure we're happy, we're on the same page, and then essentially we wing it.
That's essentially what long-form conversation is all about, isn't it? You hit record, and normally, as long as we get the first bit right, which is sort of semi-scripted, we might, if we fluff that up, we might start again. But normally we just go for it.
I can actually hear the theme tune in the background. Love that. Amazing. Yeah. Please like and subscribe.
Put all episodes to silent, please.
Yeah. If it's more interesting than the talk that we're currently giving, then damn, we failed.
Actually, a new episode dropped today. Yeah. So, you know, go and like and subscribe that.
All right, nice. So then the simulation itself is going to be, you know, this whole thing about bringing simplicity to the complex process of podcasting. Yeah, podcasting is a fairly complex process that benefits from the application of a complex systems model. So we've essentially reverse engineered a complex systems model into creating this podcast. But the reason we did that is because we took it from the model that we employ to organise and structure the simulation centre that we kind of helped to bring into
and
life.
our simulation activity as well. So it's really diverse, and you can use it for lots of different applications.
Yeah, it's got tons of applications. So we'll talk you through our SITE model, SITE, as applied to podcasting on the body of this talk. And also something we'd like to do. Some of you might have noticed there is in fact a camera over there, which is currently filming. If you don't want to appear on that, then just please let us know. But what we'd really like to do, because we've never done this before in front of a live audience, is we'd love to give a huge shout out to you and the delegation of this conference and just get everyone to wave and say hi at that point. If you don't want to do that, feel free to hide your face. That's absolutely fine.
Alternatively, if you want to whoop and cheer, you can do that as well.
That would be awesome.
We'll leave it up to you.
So we'll, at some point, as part of this briefing, we will switch that over to you and give you a chance to say hello.
Then we would normally end the podcast, and that would be it. But obviously, we wouldn't do that. There's some other stuff that happens behind the scenes before it goes live. So then we're going to kind of debrief, and we're going to unpack what we do in terms of post-production. What I do.
Yeah,
in
what Tony
terms of
does. Yeah.
post-production.
Tony does all the post. All right. So I need to accept the fact that Tony is just way more technically competent than I am. I'm basically just a mouthpiece. But there we go. So that's what we're going to do. If everyone clear on the briefing, hopefully that all makes sense to everyone. We'll get stuck in if that's okay. You ready?
Yep.
All right. Clapperboard.
Yep.
Cameras rolling. Audio
Everything's
rolling.
on? Yep.
Let's do it. Let's roll VT. Just sit back and enjoy this bit. Hello and welcome to SimCast. My name's Lawrence Hill and I am the chair of the simulation group in the School of Health Sciences at UEA Norwich.
Hello, my name's Tony Jermy, and I'm the academic lead for simulation-based education at UEA Norwich.
Today we are coming to you live from Nottingham at the CAE Human Patient Simulation Network Conference. And in front of us at this moment, we have the entire... most of the entire conference delegation.
Everyone who remained.
Everyone who is still left for this bit of the talk. So say hello to everyone. If you'd like to give us a quick wave, please give us a wave.
That's like 10 times better than I expected.
Yes! All right. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about MetaSimCast, bringing simplicity to the complex process of podcasting live. What is SimCast then, Tony?
Well, SimCast is a podcast based on simulation, particularly in higher education, which is our background in university. And it's also about our journey as simulation educators. And we know there are podcasts out there where there are world-leading simulation educators.
Yeah, that's not us.
We like to think of ourselves as perhaps advanced beginners.
Advanced beginners, yeah. Yeah, something like that. And
kind of got a clue what we're doing, but still a lot to learn.
A lot to learn. And it started off, didn't it, as we were trying to just give some information, communication, simulation communication within our school. We were recording it on Teams in the middle of COVID. We just upgraded our teaching building at the University of East Anglia to a simulation centre. And we wanted some way of effectively communicating that didn't involve people reading lots of boring minutes from the simulation group meetings.
So there's a little bit of our story in our first ever podcast, which you can go and have a look at. And we'll put a link to that up there. You have to get used to this kind of thing.
Yeah, it's weird.
And also, there's a tour of our simulation facility in episode 6, I believe it is, of our podcast. So you can go and have a look at our simulation facilities at UEA Norwich.
So we wanted to create a movement. We wanted to create a community within the school. We wanted to promote simulation activity. And then we realised, sort of fairly soon after starting to host it on YouTube, that actually there was a whole, there's a whole army of us, isn't there, simulation educators that were doing sort of similar things, and we're not necessarily very well connected, other than through events like this. So we wanted to do that. We wanted to create this sense of community and share what we were doing and invite people to come and speak and generally just kind of increase the visibility of simulation.
That's the hope.
That's the hope, yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're going to talk in this episode of how we kind of design and run our podcast. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a complex systems model that we've designed, borrowed, shamelessly stolen and
referenced,
repackaged, about how we run the podcast, but also how it can be used as a model to help run and organise simulation as well.
Yeah.
And that is our site model.
Yeah, exactly that. So lots of people are doing podcasts now, aren't they? This is just how we structure ours. And we wanted to give everyone who was interested in hosting their own podcast or starting to think about hosting one, just some of the kind of pointers and the ideas that we have learnt really through along the way and things that might be of use for other people.
So to give you a little bit of a background on the model is based on a human factors model from aviation called the Shell model. And Shell stands for software, hardware, environment, liveware, and liveware
twice.
And whenever you use it, you have to explain what it's about. So what we've tried to do is simplify it. So it can be used in lots of applications, not only in simulation, but also we do a bit of work with diagnostic testing using simulation in other industries.
Yeah.
So we wanted to try and update the language and the terminology to make it a little bit more useful. So the Shell model was first created in 1972. And it used terms like software before computers were really a thing.
Yeah.
So whenever you talk about software now, you straight away think about computers. So we've kind of redesigned it. And so we
basically went to the pub.
Yeah.
We were talking about how we're going to bring some sort of semblance of kind of order and coordination to the simulation centre. And we were in the pub and we were like, can we make this make sense? So we stumbled across Site because we think it captured everything that the Shell model had in it.
So the idea is, in the middle of the model is you as a simulation educator or facilitator. And for you to deliver simulation effectively, you have to deal with all these complex things around you. You've got the surroundings, the physical surroundings and environment. You've got the information that you have to do, a lot of the stuff behind the scenes. You've got the team that you have to be involved with, and you've also got equipment. And it also works with podcasting. And so what we're going to be doing today is talk about it from a podcasting perspective.
Exactly that. But before...
The wiggly lines...
After you, Tony.
He always does this. The wiggly lines represent the fact that in the real world is messy and the edges don't always meet up. And again, that's really, really important to understand from a complex systems model, human factors model, which there's been a lot of discussion about human factors and integration on technical skills today.
Yeah. Useful model for thinking about anything from how a department works to how you run a podcast. But before we get into unpacking the site model and how we use it to structure our podcast, there's a couple of things that we found helpful if anyone else is thinking about setting up a podcast. And firstly, it's setting an ethos. What is the ethos of your podcast? Who are you and what is the message that you're trying to convey? There's got to be this kind of consistent kind of philosophy that runs through your podcast if people are going to kind of if it's going to capture their imagination, they're going to remain interested.
So our ethos was the fact that we are advanced beginners on our journey through simulation. And we feel like we've got aspirations to be world leading, but we're probably not there yet. Does anyone else in the room feel a bit like that?
Yeah. Aim high.
Or does anyone feel like world leading?
Yeah.
Just the technical guys over there.
Yeah, these guys are awesome. So setting an ethos is important. Developing a brand is important. What is the look and feel of your podcast? How are people going to recognize it instantly? Is it going to have like a little glint in it? Is it going to be blue? And is it going to be written in your university's like acceptable font? Well, that's what we decided to do because we wanted to host it and get the support of the university. So that's why SimCast looks how it does.
Yeah, it's branded with our university's brand guidelines in place. And let's say we didn't get any hands slapped because I often ask for forgiveness rather than permission.
Yeah.
So,
what's your market position? How are you going to position yourself? And think about that because you want to keep the content coming really. And then the final is the mentality that you take to creating a podcast. And one of the things that we've learned from some of the best content creators that there are, and that is everything is content. Everything. Every single person that we've spoken to today has got something interesting to say about simulation.
He's been walking around here earlier with his gimbal and his camera recording things because
everything is content. And everyone that we've spoken to, and please, if you've got something that you'd like to say, please come and speak to us because there is a room full of the cream of the simulation crop here in the room, and we would love to hear what you've got to say, whether it's controversial, whether it's middle of the road, whether it's that you like shopping, whatever it is, we want to hear about it.
And that's the thing about YouTube as well. There is something for everyone. Yeah. And so what I would suggest is if you're thinking about maybe setting up a podcast is do a little bit of kind of reading into it, understand how YouTube and the algorithms work. So one of the things we have to do normally first, which we actually forgotten about today, is a call to action, because we know that people have got the attention span of goldfish now, and they normally switch off after a couple of minutes. So one of the first things you do is you look to the camera and you say, if you enjoyed the podcast, give us a like, and please subscribe and hit that notification bell. And again, it's a bit vomit-inducing, but that's what you have to do.
Yeah, it is vomit-inducing. But if you think about it, many of you will have written academic publications, and it's no different really from subscribing to the journal's normal approach to how you structure and how you write that paper. You have to feed the algorithm. You have to feed the algorithm data, and YouTube algorithm feeds on likes and subscribes, because if other people like it and subscribe it, then it says, oh, this might be something that other people are interested in. So it helps to connect you, and it helps to spread that message. So,
should we dip into the site model?
Let's get into the body of the talk. What does site stand for, and how does it relate to podcasting? Well, we've done what it stands for, but how does it relate to podcasting, Tony? When we say S for surroundings.
So, surroundings, physical space. If you're going to set up a podcast, you need somewhere to do it. It doesn't have to be expensive. A lot of people do podcasts remotely from home now. That's essentially how we started.
Yep.
We literally did it kind of with the equipment we had at home post-COVID, and we did it using Microsoft Teams. It was a bit rough and ready. So what we've done is we've asked the school very nicely for some money, which they were very receptive in, surprisingly.
Yeah, and we it wasn't a great deal of money, and
we'll cover that when we get to the
So finding
equipment.
a space is important, and being pragmatic around sound. Being pragmatic around the sound is important. Like, ideally, what marks a podcast out as being of good quality is the quality of the audio. The visual, you'd be surprised. You'd think it was really important, but actually, if something sounds rich, then people will continue to listen to it. So pragmatics around sound, trying to find somewhere that's relatively quiet. Our podcast studio is in fact situated on a roundabout next to the biggest hospital in the region with a helipad. So, we had to...
We do have the Hems come over.
We do,
often,
yeah.
don't we?
So we had to just kind of accept that. And the other thing is...
equally so, the office that we chose, so we have large open plan offices, and down one end we have a quiet area, and the podcast studio sits off that quiet area.
Yeah.
So when there aren't ambulances and Hems helicopters going over, it is a quieter environment. And with the building redevelopment project we did when we changed into the simulation centre, we had some sound deadening left.
Yeah.
And we had that put on the walls to just help with the acoustics. Again, we had to kind of go a little bit rogue with that.
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
there was bureaucracy and red tape to just put up some sound acoustic.
That's fine. Wasn't that rogue? It was fine.
Don't worry, the podcast's not that popular yet, Lawrence.
So set design. Set design is important too. So what is it going to look like? It's part of that brand feel that I was talking about. Like, you want something in the background. We just put a bookcase in there, and we put some like silly bits and pieces that we had. We had a skull. We used this light box to try and bring some sense of continuity and feel.
But we also put some kind of personal things in.
Yeah.
So I've got some geeky Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, we didn't bring the Stormtrooper.
And Lawrence has got some golfing bits and bonsai trees and stuff like that, just to give us a little bit of our personality as well, whilst maintaining that kind of halfway house between our organisation's branding.
Yeah. So that's surroundings. Under information, and this is kind of like training, communication, workflows, social media, that kind of stuff. Planning and scheduling is really important. Like Emily Brown's 5-stage approach, you've got to have some kind of structure to organise your content. And
actually, if we take Emily's examples of who, how, what, why, and where, and when, you could apply the site model to that.
Yeah, we loved it. So having that, and then content. This is what we mean, the mentality. If you're thinking about today, we could have done a podcast. In fact, we would love to do a podcast. Dan Blood, we haven't had a chance to get to your session yet. We're coming tomorrow, but oh my God, that is definitely coming on the pod.
We did kind of want to be on stage with moulage wounds on.
Yeah, but it just
that would be quite nice.
We couldn't get there. We had to set up here. We had to bring our set with us and set it up. Susie Barker. Susie, we know that Susie's friendly forces. So Susie, we know works at there. She is over there. Hi, Susie. Works at the University of East Anglia. So we know that we can get Susie into the studio and get her in, actually into the studio, which would be really nice, rather than having to do things remotely.
I went to one of the breakout sessions where they were talking about obstetric emergency simulation in the ED. So in situ simulation to diagnostically test the kind of the outcomes of the environment. And again, that would be great to discuss, particularly with the work that we're doing with diagnostics testing in other industries as well.
And I'm absolutely blown away by the CAE ultrasound trainer, like that augmented reality feel. I'm pretty sure that we could create an awesome podcast out of that and its application to stuff like point of care ultrasound and training of pre-hospital clinicians, EMS practitioners in ultrasound. So it's that sort of thing.
The other thing for information is things like creating a workflow. So getting slick at what you do. And we are self-taught when it comes to podcasting. I say self-taught, we've kind of learned from looking at things on YouTube. We both listen to and watch podcasts as well. So you kind of, take the best bits from different people. But as we've developed, and what we've also subsequently done is we now have 5 different podcasts that come out of the studio that we have from different people running it. So we've had to create workflows. We've had to create checklists and algorithms to look at how we can make this as streamlined as possible with people who aren't as technically proficient as other people as well. Yeah,
so just stepping into the studio, turning everything on, making sure that people can, actually record it is one, and then actually using the editing PC and, being able to multi-track using Adobe Premiere Pro, for example. That's not straightforward, but actually is okay once you have a little bit of instruction. Guest templates. If we're inviting a guest on, it's like having that template in advance and sharing that with your guest and discussing what you're going to talk about before they get them in the studio. And you go, so what do you think about this? And they're like, thinking on their feet, and it makes it uncomfortable.
Yeah,
so
it's
that sort of thing.
Yeah, we have a workflow where we basically explain how we're going to interview them. We give them some kind of preview questions. We don't always stick to script, and we will often kind of feel out how the guest is kind of settling in. But we're very keen to say that we're not going to throw them under the bus.
Yeah.
We're not going to, get them anything, politically charged to talk about where they're going to look silly on screen. So just try and make them feel as comfortable as possible.
So that's the workflow. The next part of the site model is T for team. This is, the thing is that people, each of us, if you think about in yourself as simulation educators, you have contact and relationships with all of the other aspects of the site model. You have, interactions with the equipment, you have interactions with the surroundings, you have interactions with the information systems. So team is absolutely critical when you think about, producing a podcast, running a simulation center, or just running a simulation.
And the chemistry and relationship between ourselves, the guests that we have on, I think is quite important. How many of you, just quick show of hands, how many of you listen to or watch a podcast? So quite a lot of people. It's huge, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a huge business. Now, you'll obviously be...
What keeps you watching?
Listening and watching because of either the topic or the content itself. But how much of you are interested in the relationship, the chemistry between the people talking as well? It's a big part of it, isn't it?
Yeah. So we've acquired a couple of nicknames. Yeah. We've been the Podcast Bros, which is lovely. Dick and Dom. And Ant and Deck as well, which is lovely. But it's only half joking on the Ant and Deck front, because we always, like Ant and Deck, which way round they are. It's Lawrence and Tony. Always Lawrence on the left, Tony on the right. So it is, and
that is deliberate.
There is an Ant and Deck thing going on. But yeah, that kind of that feel is part of, I suppose, we hope, what makes people possibly want to watch. But the next thing to think about in team is guests, as we've already started to mention.
Yeah, so we have recorded 20 episodes now, I think.
About that.
Yeah. And we have scheduled a load. So we have got about 5 or 6 in advance, and we release a new episode every fortnight on YouTube. And we also have a subscription with a podcast host provider called Transistor. And that will then push everything out to the audio channels. Ironically, apart from buying all the kit and equipment, it's easier to get something onto YouTube as a video than it is to get it out on things like Spotify and Amazon Music and Apple Music.
It's free.
Because you have to have a podcast host subscription, which costs, I don't know, it's about £200 a year, I think it is, for a basic license.
So yeah, so that's an important part of it.
But part of the 20 podcasts we've recorded, we've only had a guest on 3 times so far.
Yeah, so far it's been 3 guests.
And so we understand that because we're in our infancy, we are our networking is in its only beginnings, and so our guests have come from local pools and sources. But that's one of the things you're going to have to think about as well. Is I think whenever you have a guest on, it's more engaging, it's more interesting.
Yeah,
certainly for us it is, because we love listening to the guests and what they're doing.
Yeah, and we're hoping that we're going to be able to recruit some guests from today and tomorrow. We'd love you to come and speak on our podcast.
Whether that's in person or we've also been playing around with doing things remotely as well. So we're still kind of feeling out the processes and stuff.
It's also worth thinking about under team about you producing the podcast. The reality is that the first time you go to record a podcast is going to feel utterly cringing and awful.
I watched episode 1 not too long ago, and it's horrible. Yeah,
it's not nice. It's not a comfortable watch, and it's not comfortable. And it's things like looking to camera to do the call to action.
Yeah, one of our first bits of feedback was if you are talking to the viewer, to look into the camera, and so we have changed and adapted that, and it's horrible.
It feels really unnatural. It doesn't feel right unless you're, a natural lovey on stage and screen. Then great,
which neither of us are.
But it is, it's that kind of thing that you kind of have to get over the hump in terms of producing it.
When the guests come in as well, I think they're quite nervous about that. So the setup back at the UEA, we have 2 desks kind of sat together. Then I sit on one side, Lawrence sits on the other side. If we have a guest, we both sit on one side and the guest sits on the other. And the cameras are off to the side, and they're normally speaking out of eye shot. So you do forget that you're being recorded to an extent.
Yeah, try to. I mean, if it's engaging conversation, hopefully your guest forgets that they're being recorded.
And one of the things we also do with the guests is we get them in, we sit them down, and we get them comfortable with headphones on, speaking into a microphone.
Yeah.
Because we're not wearing headphones today, but we normally do when we're recording. And it's really, really useful because you can hear very clearly what the other person's saying, but it's really weird to hear your own voice to start with. But you quickly get comfortable with it, and then actually when you take it off, you're like, oh, the real world's not as good as it is.
It's not as loud.
Listening through headphones.
Can't hear everything as well. Okay, so that's team. So equipment. Be tempting to think that it was all about the equipment, but as kind of hopefully we've already sort of detailed, it really isn't. There are a few things that are kind of important. Mics.
Yes, so we put a list together, and obviously you've got the option when you do a podcast of doing it either audio only or video only. So this is the kit and equipment that we use. And we'll kind of explain why we've gone through it. So the mics are very important. Like Lawrence said, the audio is probably the most important component. If your audio sounds really good, then the quality of your podcast is going to be good. So if you're going to invest your money anywhere, invest it in decent audio. So we're currently outputting it through something called a Rodecaster Pro 2, which is basically a kind of prosumer grade mixing deck, which is really easy to use. Touchscreen, buttons, very programmable, but also does everything out of the box. So you can just hit record and it does a lot of it for you. For the first time today, we've got it coming through speakers, which we don't normally do, and the fantastic sound guys and the AV team over there have helped us out, which has been brilliant. But you can see it's pretty pricey. It's 550 quid. You can get a smaller one, which has been released now for a little bit cheaper, but my personal opinion is if you're going to invest your money, invest something like that because it makes life really, really easy. The microphones, about £100 each. These boom arms are about £100, which is expensive. You can pick them up for 15 quid, a cheap version on Amazon, but it all came as a package. And again, because we had bought it through the university, we had to buy through our approved equipment supplier, which with the university goes, we're going to charge you 3 times the normal price and you're going to pay it. But it didn't come out of my wallet.
Choice.
So I didn't really mind that.
No.
What else have we got? Headphones. Invest in a decent set of headphones, both for listening to the podcast when you're doing it, but also for post-production as well. It's really, really important. Don't scrimp and save on audio. Cameras were quite expensive. We went for 4K cameras. So we output to YouTube in 1080p in normal HD resolution, which for most people is more than enough to watch a YouTube video. But we went for a 4K camera because we've got one camera facing us. But what I can do, because I'm recording in a higher resolution in post-production, is I can have one screen, which is both of us, but I can also crop into either one of us and create 2 new views and still keep that HD quality. So with one camera, I can create 3 different views. We've obviously got 2 cameras because we sit beside each other. We'd love to have a 3rd camera.
Hopefully Father Christmas is listening. Fell.
But again, you can buy cameras relatively cheaply. You don't have to spend as much as what we did. And then there's other little bits like
But
memory cards.
you could easily use a high quality iPhone camera. Like you don't need to go for like prosumer equipment. If you can get an iPhone camera and hold it steady in a mount, actually you can produce reasonably high quality video doing that and then edit them together. And
the reason that we went for the Sonys is because they are. Their face tracking is brilliant, so the autofocus is really, really good, and they are designed for content creators. So there is a recognition in the industry that these are being used more and more for podcasting. So a bit like what Emily was talking about at the keynote presentation, there's so much out there. There's so much potential routes and ways that you could go. So you can do a bit of research. And I did all my research by looking at YouTube videos, funnily enough. Mm-hmm. As a question I was going to ask you, Emily, how do you do your research when you're looking for your kit and equipment? Conferences, yeah. Google, YouTube. Yeah, so same sort of thing from a podcasting point of view.
Nice. So then what else have we got? We've got lighting.
It's surprisingly important, and it's a thing that people underestimate.
That's why we brought the rig with us, because I don't know if it looks any different from where you're sitting, but certainly on camera, if you're filming in reasonably high quality, as soon as there's not sufficient light in a room, the video quality just really drops off and it looks poor. If you can't find the money to get a lighting rig, just face the window. Just find like some kind of regular kind of pragmatic solution and get some lighting on your face.
But again, they're relatively cheap. So we already had these lights in the building, so we've kind of repurposed those. But you can pick up 2 lights like this for about £150. We have a third light, which we have a diffuser on, which we face at the ceiling, and it just helps to illuminate the room a little bit more as well. And again, if you go on YouTube, there's so many video tutorials on how to light a podcast. You have a key light, you have a main light, and then you have like a backlight. And again, we're a little bit limited because our background is quite close to us in our office, but we've bought like a really cheap little LED strip light colour thing that we have around the bookcase and around the table, just to illuminate the background a little bit. We have another light which we've got a plant behind me normally, which we uplight, and that again just separates the background from the person on that side of the table. And then post-production. So this is, again, an area where we're quite fortunate. Again, through a university, we have a university license to be able to use some of the paid software. So we have Adobe Creative Cloud. So I use Adobe Premiere Pro, which is the video editing software. But again, there are free versions. So you can use DaVinci Resolve.
DaVinci Resolve, you can get
is the free version. It's a fantastic bit of kit. So if you are on a shoestring budget, you can still create a really good podcast that you can put out there, either as video or as audio as well.
Yeah, like, one of the talks, Emily's talk this morning talked about the right tech, the right place at the right time. Actually, whatever you can get your hands on is the right tech at the right place at the right time, to be honest with you. And like Stefan said in his opening address, shiny objects don't solve the problems on their own. So it isn't just about the equipment. Creating a podcast, running a simulation, or kind of running a simulation center requires just as much emphasis placed on team, information, and surroundings as it does on the equipment. So that's it.
So that we'd normally end a podcast, and we're really bad at ending podcasts. It's the bit that we rehearse the least.
Yeah.
We tend to waffle a bit, look at each other awkwardly, and then try and close it down. I think what we've discovered closing the podcast is just to go, thank you very much for watching. That's the end of the podcast, essentially.
Except it's not, because I think it would be remiss of us to ignore the fact that there is a huge amount of work that goes on after the cameras stop rolling.
Yes.
And to kind of think about this, the talk that we're giving today within that structure of a simulation sort of event, we've given you the briefing, we've given you the simulation of using the SART model. The debrief really is where Tony puts in a load of work on the editing PC, making it hang together like a podcast. So talk us through that process, Tony.
Yeah, so we do have an editing PC at the university, which is designed specifically, it's a souped-up PC, which is capable of using something like Adobe Premiere Pro. But I don't want to be stuck at work after recording podcasts, so I actually take everything home and do it on my PC at home, which, again, I've got the license for. So we have an SD card on each of the cameras, which I then have to export onto my computer. We have a USB in the back of the Rodecaster, so we've recorded the audio separately from each camera, and then I put it into the software, and Adobe Premiere Pro is a fantastic bit of kit, and what you can do is you can combine all of those to create what is called a multi-track file. And what that allows you to do is combine the video. You can then manipulate the video, like I mentioned earlier, to create crop versions, so I can create new camera views. And then provided we've done the old clapper thing at the start, that allows you to align the audio so that it brings everything nicely together. So the audio channels, and again, you can boost those and make them sound a little bit better with a bit of software called Adobe Audition. So I run it through there, a couple of minutes, and then I create the multi-track, and I press 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the different camera angles, and I watch it back very narcissistically in real time, and I look at the audio track, because we record each audio track separately, so that's a separate track to this track. I can see when Lawrence is talking, and I can see when I'm talking. They are natural cut points to different camera angles. And what you'll notice, if you're sad enough to go back and look for all of our episodes of SimCast, the earlier episodes, we literally have 2 camera views. The later episodes, as I've developed my skills, I'm playing around a little bit more with cropping in, cropping out, reactions, nice little bits. You know, if Lawrence is talking for 35 minutes and not breaking, he literally doesn't stop breathing.
I actually don't stop to breathe
sometimes.
This is one of the things that I've realised looking at it in post, is that like Tony speaks and then these little stops where he breathes. I apparently don't breathe or don't stop speaking during breathing. It's like playing the bagpipes for me, talking on a podcast. So it's just like a continuous noise, as you can probably tell.
So again, what you have to do is you have to think about the end user. Am I going to get bored watching this continue? Do I need to just cut to me, just like...
Yeah.
looking mindlessly as you continue to talk. But what you can do is you can capture some really nice bits, and that again that helps to generate that. What were we talking about earlier? The
feel,
the chemistry and relationship between us and the guests, or each other.
Yeah. Something else that you want to do, like when you're scrolling through YouTube, what you notice is that there are normally pictures, aren't there? And you kind of decide what you want to watch by what those thumbnails are. So capturing that thumbnail image of your guest before they leave is actually really useful as well. And thinking about what those thumbnail photos are going to look like when people are scrolling through the content. Oh yeah, that looks interesting. That's got a cool picture. I'll click on that.
We often put a bit of humour in.
Try to, yeah. And with the one that we forgot, we did a podcast which was looking at the role of AI in simulation, and we used AI to create some simulation scenarios, and it was actually quite good. I had an existential crisis, but afterwards we forgot to create a thumbnail. So we AI generated it.
Yeah, I used Photoshop, which has got an AI generator. So
but you can't normally do that. So get a nice, clean photo of your guest, so that you can kind of make it into a little PowerPoint slide, and then copy that, and then you can use that as your thumbnail, and everyone will want to click on it. That's the idea. So what have we learned then? What have we learned? So, thinking about this, Steve, we've done our reactions, we've done a bit of analysis. What are we going to take away from this podcast?
I've obviously learned some technical aspects, which Lawrence hasn't.
That is so unfair. I'll take it. It's fine. Yeah, I've learned nothing about the technical aspects of podcasting.
I've learned to be more comfortable in front of camera, and I have learned to be comfortable with my own silence, because you're super conscious and hyper aware of every particularly when you're doing it in one take. I think you've learned that you might need to breathe now and again.
I could breathe a bit more often. I've also learned not to crash Tony's call to action, because he gets really grumpy when that happens. So Tony will be like, if you enjoy this podcast, please like and subscribe. And I'll butt in. He'll be looking at me like...
Because I just breathe like a normal human being.
Yeah. So...
we've also learned... we've had a couple of guests on, and we chose those guests based on the simulation activity that they have been involved with, or they have done. So one of our guests has done the largest simulation event we've ever done in the school. Unfortunately, both of those guests were male, and so we've had a little bit of criticism that we are 2 white middle-aged men hosting a podcast with male guests on. So we have taken that on board.
Yeah, we have. And actually, there is an enormous wealth and diversity of interests and people who are doing simulation who are interested to come and talk about it. And genuinely, people are kind of quite... Normally, people are like, oh, really? Oh, yeah, I come and talk on your podcast? Oh, yeah, okay. What does it involve? So normally, people are quite keen and willing. So that's something that we're learning as well, that there's this enormous wealth of experience and expertise out there that we can tap into and share with a wider community.
And I think what we've learned as well is it started with just us, and we kind of had our little own internal workflow. But as it's become more popular and more people want to get involved, which has happened at quite a refreshing rate, we've learned that it is a complex system, and that actually we need to apply a complex system model to it to try and make it as simple as possible, to make it as accessible for everyone that we work with. So that probably will bring us to the end of the podcast.
I think that will bring us nicely to the end of the podcast.
But as we've got a live audience, do we have any questions? Stunned silence. A disagreement on air. We disagree all the time, but probably not on air. What we sometimes do, again, we have a script. What we sometimes do is throw each other under the bus.
Inadvertently.
And we'll go, have you ever had this experience in simulation where this thing has happened? So in one of the episodes, we talked about the role of the confederate, or the stooge, or the actor playing the role of the patient. And Lawrence, just out of the blue, said, have you ever had a confederate go rogue in one of your simulations?
And the example
and my
you
light
wanted to
bulb,
give.
I thought of someone immediately, and I thought, how am I going to say this in a way that they can't identify themselves, although they absolutely will. You have to think on the spot sometimes, but I don't think we've ever disagreed.
Not really. And I mean, we've been working together for 10 years, and we've ironed out any of the disagreements along the way. And it was only in the last sort of year that we've been doing the podcast. But if we are going to disagree, normally it's in the briefing. So it'll be like, actually, no, we don't really want to do that, or we don't want to talk. No, we shouldn't take it that way. We should take it this way. But it's not normally they're not normally philosophical arguments, irreconcilable differences. They're normally just like
Lawrence
details.
is very philosophical, and I think we don't disagree because I'm not.
Because I'm not. Yeah.
What has happened, though, actually, on the flip side, in the episode where we talked about we did an episode on the four horsemen of the debrief apocalypse. So these are
so we recognise four archetypes.
Four archetypes that everyone either has a kind of tendency to lean towards when they are doing their debriefing.
Yeah. The tutor. The groupie.
Yeah, the groupie is the yes man. Oh, you did an amazing job.
So the
fantastic.
tutor,
You're really
so the
good.
groupie, that was amazing, fantastic, guys. Really well done.
The tutor turns it into a teaching session.
Yeah.
Then you've got the hero who talks about all their own stories. And it's all about them.
Let me tell you this time when And then the critic.
And then the critic, who is, when you do an Oski, they're not the hawk or the dove, they're the velociraptor.
Yeah.
Who just, if someone does simulation, they take an absolute battering from them.
So we didn't really disagree about that, but we had some kind of quite genuine moments of reflection talking about them, saying like, I've definitely inhabited all of those archetypes
but at
times.
Also, at the end of the episode, again, it wasn't particularly scripted, but we just really nicely bounced off each other as we sort of
just worked, didn't it?
It was one of the episodes we actually ended quite well.
For once.
But again, that's part of that sort of chemistry that we've developed, both on screen and off.
Mm. Dan, you had a question.
Yeah, I wondered if you'd struggle to, with engagement at all. So, I think we all hope that simulations are quite a forgiving community. But you're putting content online. Have people been forgiving, or have you found it difficult?
Do you know, we've actually had a little bit of critique from someone who's not here today, someone who has been responsible for educating quite a lot of simulation educators, and I know Alex knows who that is. No, we had some great offline discussion with one person who commented offline, and it was to do with whether simulation can ever truly be safe. And, whether we talked about simulation as a safe container, and we talked about, the debrief as a safe space in which to voice opinion.
What does safe mean in simulation?
What does safe mean? And we talked about what happens in the debrief, remaining in the debrief. And they were quite adamant that actually the learning should transcend the debrief, and we were furiously agreeing that that there should be this kind of Chatham House rule about what happens in the debrief you should learn from and apply to your future practice. But through the fact that we didn't have a chance to sit down and have a proper conversation, I think there was a perception that we were saying that you can't use what you have from the debrief for your future practice, or you can't talk about it. And so we had a really healthy discussion about that, and actually we're going to invite him on to a future podcast.
Engagement's an interesting one. So again, our podcast comes out every Wednesday, every fortnight on a Wednesday. So what I do is the podcast comes out. I then post it on my LinkedIn page, often with spelling mistakes.
Get picked up by friendly forces.
Put it on Twitter. I also will advertise it on Facebook and other social media to try and get people actively involved. LinkedIn tends to be the most popular kind of receptive social media site from it. Obviously, it's full of like-minded people. But I think,
and in reality, that's probably why we're here today.
Yeah, but there also needs to be an understanding that sometimes you just have to get the content out there.
Yeah.
And there'll be an episode or there'll be something that you just hit that sweet spot at the right moment and it will gain traction. So we know that we're in our infancy. We know that our views and our watches and our listens are probably could be better. But that's one of the reasons why we're here today, to sort of spread that message. We've heard about a simulation technician network with over 6,000 people.
Yeah.
We love to be involved in that. Up there already, fantastic.
Oh,
and
amazing.
it's just about gaining momentum.
Yeah.
And I think some of the people in our school perhaps need to understand that a little bit more. I think they're expecting better results quickly. Some podcasts are running for years before they ever get real traction.
Yeah, it takes
and we're
time.
very niche as well. You know, simulation is quite niche. We're never going to get the amount of likes and views that if you're a technology-based podcast or something like that, you're going to, subscribe to everyone.
Is there any other questions?
There's one over.
Yes, hello.
I've come more to be learning, so we're mental health simulation, and I was wondering what makes a good guest.
Anyone with a view.
Yeah, anyone with something to talk about.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting, and I think it's a guest is firstly I think it's anybody who's prepared to come and speak on your podcast for one, because everything is content, and then I would say that it only has to be slightly kind of different from anything that's gone before, and even if it's the same thing that's gone before, and it's been done by a different person in a slightly different way, then that's novel too.
Topics can be revisited, yeah. Absolutely. But you know, anything where the end user, the viewer or the listener is going to find particular interest in it, then that serves for the potential of a good guest.
Yeah.
And then it's up to us as hosts to make that guest feel comfortable enough so that they can get their message and their story out there.
I think there's some responsibility on the hosts as well so a guest, it's not all on the guest. Like, what kinds of questions would I want to ask somebody who was coming on to talk about mental health simulation? So I think a lot of it's about asking the right questions to get the most out of the people that have got this kind of niche or new knowledge.
Our take-home message often, that last question we ask the guest is, what bit of advice would you give to anyone watching in a similar situation? So again, to make it relatable where possible.
That sounds amazing. Let's talk later.
That was a self-invite onto the podcast. Thank you.
Definitely. You're welcome. Anytime.
Another question.
When you adopt a name like SimCast, you're obviously quite broad and general. It comes with a sense of responsibility about, okay, how I think me coming to the medical field, I know it's quite a criticized industry. How do you manage that? You're putting yourself over there, exposing.
Yeah.
I've never thought about it, to be honest with you.
Oh, have you not?
I'm terrified now.
It's
Reconsidering my life choices.
well, Tony will always seek forgiveness rather than permission. But I would say I welcome the spicy conversation. I welcome the challenge. But actually, what you say there is important. And one thing that I made a note in my sort of several hundred words of notes I've got here is that with kind of when you start producing that podcast, you do kind of take on a leadership responsibility that you may not have had previously.
Yeah.
And I think being mindful of that.
And it's not always at the forefront of your mind, is it?
No, it's not always. But so we try really hard to not to sort of say things which are controversial, but we kind of rely on the fact that, as somebody rightly said, I think it was Dan said, that this is a friendly, supportive community who are a community of educators. And like, if a simulationist is going to sort of turn around and give me like totally negative criticism, I'm like, that's not much of a debrief, dude. Like, perhaps you want to rethink that piece of feedback into something a little bit more constructive.
But also, one of the roles of the guest on a podcast is often to play devil's advocate. And if you've got a guest on who's got a controversial opinion, sometimes you have to poke them with a stick a bit and see where it goes.
Yeah. And so I think it's okay to have things on there that are a bit controversial, because it's gonna trigger conversation, and ultimately that is all we're doing in the first place. Is just engaging each other and our guests in conversation for other people to listen in on.
It's
and
not
have
like
a
we
view.
live in a polarised world, is it?
No, not at all. No. Okay, I'm conscious of time, and I know that cocktails and casino
And there's
is
£100
calling.
up for grabs in the raffle.
Yeah. So
We will wrap it up there. So thank you very much, everyone who's joined live, and thank you, everyone who's watched this. And we can't wait to see you in the next one.
thanks, everyone. Bye for now.
Okay, thank you very much, Lawrence, Tony. That was awesome. Really enjoyed that. Look forward to seeing it. So I'm only going to take a couple more minutes of your time now just to go over the evening arrangements. We've obviously got the £100 cash prize, and it is very much you have to be here to be in it. So anyone that's left and taken their tickets, there's no leaving tickets behind or anything like that. So we're going to do that bit first, because I think that the person who's going to present this is feeling a little bit hot and sweaty under the face at the moment. So Kieran Feeney from Simonskill. Is Kieran around anywhere? Could he come? I can't see Kieran. Anywhere? Oh, here he is. So as you can see, Kieran's really aged since he's left CAE. So Matt, if you could draw out a number for us. We're going to go for. So is number 27 still here? Number 27 still here? No? Next one? Give him time. Number 14. Is number 14 here? We still going? Come on, Matt. 166. Come on, Matt. We've got things to do. Number 16. 53. Here we are. Hey. If you want to come up to the front, collect your prize. So take out the.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. There you go. Thank you.
Also, so that everyone can be a winner today, David Payne from New College in Swindon has kindly donated boxes and boxes of these yellow stress balls, which if you people would like them, I've got a few at the front if anyone wants to catch. If not, you can grab them from the back of the room. Just wanted to do a quick thank you as well. So last year when we put on our HPSN conference, we got in your feedback forms afterwards, and as we've said, we like to listen to you and we like to put on a show that everyone's going to enjoy. One of the things that we got told about was that we wanted more tech content, so something that was a little bit more suited to the technical staff that were here as well. So we listened and we like to feel that we've delivered. But in order to do that, we had to reach out to the tech community and find out what was it that people were going to be interested in, what kind of things could we do. So the first person I had this conversation with was Dan Blood from the University of Surrey, and Dan just walked out the room, hasn't he? That is typical. Is he still there? Go and grab him. But anyway, we just want to do a thank you to Dan because he has sat on at least 12 or 15 Teams calls with us. He's got other people from the tech community to come forward, presenting ideas, sharing ideas of how we can make it more interesting, make things more hands-on, so it's not all just presentations and things, and make it better for the tech community. So I just wanted Dan to come to the front when he's here to give him a bottle to say thank you. And that is typical that he was sat there literally 5 minutes ago. Okay, we'll present this to him tomorrow if I know he's coming back, he's probably going to get changed. And then finally, so for the evening plans, hopefully the majority of people in here are staying. So firstly, there will be food in the restaurant where the lunch was earlier, which will be served between 7 and 9 o'clock tonight. It's all paid for and everything, so people please come along, don't worry about going out and finding dinner elsewhere. We've also got the cocktail making and the casino tables. So the cocktail making, I believe, is going to be set in 6 groups of 20 or 15 or 20. So basically what we'll do, we'll take the first group at 7 o'clock and we'll just say first 20 people go down and you'll have a 20-minute cocktail making class with people. So for those who are going to come back, if you want to meet in the bar at 6:30, what you'll also notice in your name badge, you should have 2 free drinks vouchers in there as well. So please use these in the bar. The bar staff will accept them. We've got a few extras as well that we can probably give out later. But yeah, please come back, continue to network, socialise, and have a really good evening. Thank you very much. We'll see you all later. I know it was. I was going to.